Hello and welcome to another Udon tutorial video. This one we are going to be covering something called public variables and also something called flow. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is that we have a new friend here. In addition to the cube, we now have small cube. It's just a default Unity cube size to half size. We still have our original cube, rotate cube here. However, what we want to do now is have the program, the Udon behavior that's on this cube here, inform this cube that it needs to rotate instead of this one. So the end goal is to not have this one rotate, but to have this one rotate instead. Thankfully, this is pretty easy with something called a public variable. So all of these things that we've been accessing so far, these properties, are actually variables. They're being defined in some way. The first instance here is technically a null, but because of the way that Udon is built, it defaults to itself when it's null. This one is defined by a constant here that we've put in, which is the y-axis, and this one is defined by this set of nodes that we have, that we previously went over in the last video. So I'm going to make a new variable to input into the instance node, so I can tell the program which cube I want it to act on. So easiest way to do that, press spacebar, type the type. That's a little confusing. I'm typing the type of variable that I want. The type of the variable that I want is a transform, and if you search for a type like transform, then the first option will be variable. So if I search for, say, float, then you'll find it in the first couple ones there. There's float. In this case, however, I want transform, so I'm going to drop that into my graph. So you'll see there's a couple of options here. There is the name right there, which I'm going to say is now the cube to rotate. And there's also a checkbox, and it says public on it. And this is important. I'm going to go ahead and check this checkbox, and we can go ahead and save the scene and look back at the cube script. Or the Udon behavior rather, and we can see that now I can access the cube to rotate variable. It is by default set to self because we haven't assigned anything to it. We're going to go ahead and assign it small cube. So we've set that in the Udon behavior here. I'm going to go back to the Udon graph. Now you can see here that nothing has changed actually in the program because this is just a program. It's referencing nothing really. It doesn't know about the scene. The Udon behavior has the program. The program tells the behavior, hey, there's a public variable, you should use it here. That means that you can use this program on lots of cubes, and each one of them can have a different definition for the public variable. So I've got this transform for the public variable. What do I need to do with it next? I need to get that variable and then put it into this input node right here. So I'm going to say get variable for my next node, and I'm going to drag that over here. It is predefined with the only variable we have available, cube to rotate. You can also create a new variable this way. I prefer to do it just by adding a node. That way you can easily find the type. Otherwise you have to scroll through this giant list of things in order to define which type that you want to access. So instead, it's normally easiest just to search for the type that you need. I'm going to drag this to here, indicating that I want to take this object and put it here. For the input of the transform. And if I save once again and go back out to the scene and hit play and go to my scene view because my cube is hiding, you can see that the cube is now rotating on the small cube instead of on the big cube like we had before. So as you can see, the behavior is still here. This cube doesn't have a behavior on it, but its rotation value is being changed by the behavior on this cube. So now I talked a couple of times about this, these noodles, these connecting things, and I need to kind of demonstrate or explain to you what this indicates. These noodles or these lines indicate flow. They connect an output to an input. There are a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can take a value, like we're getting a value from here, that's an output, into an input on a different node. So you're flowing the output to an input, and that's generally how you're going to work with very few exceptions inside of Udon. So we take a value here that outputs into an input that takes another value and does something to it, and from that operation we get an output, which then we flow to the action node, what we're doing actually to the scene, to whatever we're acting upon. Same thing happens here. We have a variable that is set with the public variable. We're defining it here. It is set in the Udon behavior on the cube right here. We get that variable, we flow it over to the transform rotate, and now we know what we're acting on. Now this one right here is a special type of node. This is basically a execution flow. So this is indicating that we are flowing execution from here to here. On update, I want to perform this operation. So these are fundamentally, they're roughly the same. They mean the same things. They're connecting an output to an input. But in this specific case, we are connecting the output of what should I do next to the input of this is what you should do next. There's a couple of ways of thinking about this, just conceptually and kind of defining for yourself how to understand it, but generally that is how it works. So that is pretty much it for this one. I'll see you in the next video.